now want to turn it over to San Bernardino. We've got James Graham, coordinator of SI at the campus there, and Kiana Wallace, who was the Assistant Dean for Undergraduate Studies, who's now moved on to a new position as Director of Implementation for California College Guidance Initiative. This is a presentation that they've given to our SI community, and they also happen to present this version of this, I should say, at the Inland Empire SI Conference, and they've done a great job with this presentation as well, and we wanted them to share to the larger group. So James and Kiana, all to you.
Sure. Welcome. We are glad that you get to spend this time with us. No, we're glad to spend this time with you. We're going to kind of run through, just like all of the other campuses, a little picture of who we are here in our SI program, because they're all a little bit different. We did launch support under the name Supplemental Instruction back in 2012, but it was very different. These were courses by enrollment for 2 units of non-baccalaureate credit that were taught by teaching associates. So it wasn't SI in this UMKC modality. That didn't really transition for us until the 2015-2016 academic year. We started a systematic transition over the course of that academic year. So it wasn't until 16-17 that we were a fully UMKC aligned SI program. So there is some history here, but we're relatively new kids on the block when it comes to UMKC SI. We are housed in academic affairs in the Office of Undergraduate Studies here at CSUSB. Our funding primarily comes from Student Success Initiative funding, equity funding. We do have some strategic plan funding that we use as well. So we are not an institutionalized program. We are funded by students as part of their tuition. In 2017, 2018, this academic year, we are still on the quarter system here. We are transitioning 2020 to semesters, but we still have 3 quarters within our primary academic year here. We have a total of 112 SI sessions over the course of this year that we've been running to support 57 courses with a total of 130 total sections being supported. This total of all courses served within the academic calendar over 3 quarters in the academic year. So this quarter we're serving about 45 sections and 23 distinct courses. We do work in collaboration with 12 academic departments, which is really exciting. We've seen that grow significantly over the years. When SI was started here, we supported 4 courses. So you can see there's been significant growth in a very short period of time. We're going to talk about some of the ways that we've been able to grow through the leveraging of data and understanding really student success and how that correlation works with supplemental instruction. We currently employ 34 SI leaders and 3 senior leaders, so we're a little bit smaller than Fullerton, we're a little younger, and so we're still growing in that capacity. We have around 20,500 students here at CSUSB. Around 2,000 of those students we anticipate will participate in SI sessions this academic year, and that's not bad for a young program that's only in its 2nd full academic year of open SI attendance, open sessions, UMKC modality. So that's a little bit of what we do here at CSUSB and what we look like. Kiana's going to talk to us a little bit about our background in institutional research, those collaborations, and primarily today in our session we're going to talk about how we leverage those relationships, how that impacts our program specifically, but also campus-wide, how we leverage that to involve students and to onboard faculty and other departments in collaboration so that we can strengthen this student support.
Well, thanks, James. So I've been on the I was on the campus. I started here in 2010, and so I just left CSUSB in February. So I've had the opportunity to watch the program grow and develop. And so for some of the folks out there who are participating on this call who either have new programs or programs that you're thinking about developing, I know when you hear people talk about the data, the analytics, the studies, and the ways that they used it, depending on where you're positioned in the institution, that has an influence on the access that you have to the resources to conduct the studies that you'd like to do to be able to tell your program story. So I will make an intentional focus on just kind of sharing how we developed our relationship with institutional research, which is the area of our campus where we were able to get the assistance that we needed. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of our other partners too. So we've been working collaboratively with institutional research here at CSUSB since 2012. So from receiving grants where we had co-located student assistants who were supported by institutional research around the data assessment and analysis pieces, and then program and student support pieces over in our area, to like developing predictive models to identify students and their likelihood of retention so that we could deploy resources to support them in their success. And so we like to say that we have an ongoing relationship based on learning, student success, Starbucks, because we do take them to Starbucks often to kind of pick their brains and learn a little bit, and sarcasm, because sometimes as you go through the process of analyzing your data, you learn things. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not. So we think that some of our successes can be attributed to the convergence of like the willingness of our IR team to work with us. As they say, they're really excited to pass on data to colleagues who then throw more questions back and who want to know more and want to engage around their work. And the scope of our IR office, which also includes institutional effectiveness. So we have a full suite of resources at our disposal on our campus and a lot of support. Next slide.
So I think traditionally, when we think of collaboration with institutional research or institutional effectiveness, and we are looking at data sets, we have kind of a linear approach in general. So it generally starts with a mandate or a request specifically from campus administration that is a charge that's given to institutional research to assess programs. I'm sorry about this, Brett, this is very animated, so we can go ahead and go to the next one. So campus administration to institutional research with a specific mandate and a specific data set that we're looking at and looking at specific outcomes. From there, that data as it's analyzed might get pushed back up to campus administration, and then down the line, in our case, to undergraduate studies, and then from that point on to supplemental instruction in this case. And then eventually would make its way to colleges, departments, faculty partners, and so on, and then to SI leaders, SI participants and stakeholders at that level. And it's very linear and just kind of gets pushed down. So there's not a whole lot of collaboration and dialogue necessarily as questions are raised, and we end up with very static data sets. Here at CSUSB, leveraging that relationship that Kiana was describing, we've had to answer some tough questions, and so we've pulled in and had a very robust dialogue, pulled in different stakeholders at different points. So for us, it looks a little bit more like this as we move to the next slide. So we look at that relationship that we've developed over time between undergraduate studies and institutional research, and we have that ongoing dialogue. But because of that and that groundwork that was laid initially, we're able to add supplemental instruction to that mix and start some of that conversation. There we go. Yeah. So we'll have circles that are added as we move through some of these bands. So we sat down then together as a team, Kiana and myself and our institutional research team, and started looking specifically at assessing our program and looking at the questions that are raised at a programming level, what raw data needs to be collected in order for us to be able to analyze our effectiveness just within our program specifically. But then from there, we were able to pull in other stakeholders. So we began enlarging that circle and having conversations with faculty, department leadership, and adding that into our dialogue. Kiana had many meetings just having conversations about what are your concerns, what are your questions, what questions does supplemental instruction raise for you, and are there data points that we can collect, and is there analysis that we can do that would help to answer some of those questions. And we're going to talk about those questions specifically in just a few moments. From there, we move into a collaboration with our SI leaders, senior leaders, students, pulling those stakeholders into this conversation, which of course raises even more specific questions. And at that point, we start talking about meaningful data presentation. We're going to talk in just a little bit about participatory action research and how we mobilized and involved our students in that process and invited them to be a part of that circle and what that would mean for us in terms of that data conversation. From there, we enlarged even more with regard to that circle, and we start receiving feedback and questions that are raised and reporting at the provost office level, colleges, deans, etc., and involving those individuals and stakeholders in the conversation. What do we need to look at in terms of GI 2025? What are we looking at in terms of graduation and retention with the executive orders regarding math, English, and how does SI, what role do we play there, and what can the data tell us about that? And then that circle just continues to get larger. Here we are today, collaborating at a system-wide level, assessing and discussing the impact of SI across the CSU. So there are all kinds of things that we're able to learn as we enlarge that circle and as we involve more and more people in the dialogue. We're able to look at things like graduation and retention. We have exciting preliminary data there as we look at SI and its role in that larger scheme with regard to graduation initiative. Some of our preliminary data, we're looking at first-time freshmen retaining first-time freshmen at 11% higher than non-SI participants. So SI participants, 97% retention at first-time freshmen, 86% for non-SI participants. Also looking at our graduating seniors at 95% for SI participants versus 89% in non-SI participants. So seeing the impact there and involving multiple people in that dialogue and conversation. This is all very preliminary, so we're excited to see what that looks like as we continue to grow as a program and have more terms under our belt, longer term data sets, and being able to see, like Fresno, it's wonderful because they have this long history, so they can track students from their entry to graduation, and so we're looking forward to being able to continue that as we move forward.
Next slide. So we've talked a little bit about our partnerships with institutional research, and James really shared like the structure and the concentric circles around the different populations that we work with. And so I wanted to speak a little bit to just some of the value that we found in our partnerships with the faculty from academic departments, right? Because when we were piloting SI for different new courses, we're really asking, in many cases, chairs to, bring their colleagues on board to bring SI to their classes, or new faculty members are really like trusting us and trying something out and weren't really sure if it would work for their course, right? So it was really helpful to engage in conversations with them because they were in many cases trying to influence or encourage their colleagues, but also just trying to understand themselves, like more about does this really work? So we started with the really the low-hanging fruit terms of questions, right? So our DFWI rates for SI participants look higher or lower than non-SI students. And then one of the interesting ones that I used to get all the time was, aren't SI students just students who would have received an A or a B in the course anyway? So are you actually, is there a real effect? And is SI more effective for some courses than others? So it forced us to kind of go back and think about like, what information do we really need to support our program, right? Because if our faculty partners are asking these questions, I want to be able to provide them with information on a timely basis and in a format where it's easy for them to share with their colleagues who do different types of research, right? So when we're studying or doing assessment of, academic support programs, sometimes it looks and feels a little bit different. And so then the other piece was really trying to figure out what data will IR need from our program to answer the questions, and what format did we need to provide that data in, which was also, I think, a process for us because we track participation on spreadsheets that SI leaders complete in their sessions. So, developing like our protocol around like collecting the data on a consistent basis, the timeframes in which we had to deliver that information to institutional research, their current workload and how they can fit us into the flow, and then feeding that data into the systems that we needed it to be able to answer questions in a timely manner was a process for us.
Absolutely, and as part of that and part of that collaboration, so hearing from faculty, hearing from staff, hearing from department chairs, and understanding their needs and their perspectives, but also in that partnership with institutional research, that team has brought into our dialogue questions that we wouldn't have considered at all because of just the uniqueness in the way that they think and how they, what they're looking for as they look for data patterns. And so they've challenged us and said, would it be interesting to you? Would it be helpful if we explore this or if we look at that, which has been really wonderful as well. And as part of that, one of the things that we were intentional about, and I know that Fresno mentioned this specifically as well, is that we were able to use match sample data comparisons to identify and answer some of these questions with a greater deal of credibility. Match sample data being a process that enables group comparison by reducing the effect of bias. So we matched on a number of different criteria, SI participants versus non-SI participants. We looked at course, gender, ethnicity, student level, Pell Grant status, cumulative GPA, high school and transfer GPA, full and part-time status, and course repeat status. Oh, yeah, that's on the next slide. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the slides, but yeah, you'll see that list there. And we were able to compare students, SI participants and non-SI participants by matching students in similar, on similar criteria. And we're able to identify then and eliminate some of those biases and variables, which was very helpful to us. And as a result of that, Akira Kanatsu in our institutional research department was able to publish a piece. We have monthly, our institutional research department publishes a Did You Know that goes out to faculty and staff and administration across campus. And he published a Did You Know that was just on SI using that match sample comparison data to be able to look at student success, DFWI rates, beginning and ending GPA for SI participants versus non-SI participants matched on those criteria. And this went out to our faculty partners, this went out to departments, and this helped to drive the conversation, inform that dialogue. It raised even more questions, which was welcome for us because that pushes the conversation along. And it helped us to be able to better shape our trajectory and impacted us in terms of our programming and just how we would shape that, knowing that SI doesn't work well for every course. It works better for some than for others, and being able to partner effectively and use our resources, which are limited, as wisely as possible.
So one other piece about the exchange or the sharing of the data infographic that we have on the screen is that in being a good partner to the academic departments that we worked with, before we committed or supported the dissemination of the information around our outcomes, we consulted with each of the department chairs and faculty members that we partnered with to make sure they didn't have anything else that they wanted to maybe add to the Did You Know infographic. We wanted them to know before it went out what it was going to look like and feel like. And so the feedback that we received from our colleagues was that they appreciated that piece and they were good with it. And so that's how we were able to get that out to the campus. So in terms of like moving forward, on our next slide, we talk a little bit about, it worked out perfectly. I had an assignment for a class in my PhD program, and we were looking at participatory action research. And so we thought, hey, this is a great opportunity to also see how this works within a program. And so with participatory action research, there's a three-step process. So the first piece is around discovery, the second piece is around engaging in measurable action, and then the last piece is around the reflection based on your findings. And so what we really were drawn to PAR, participatory action research, for was that it integrates the people who are either the recipients or the participants in your programs into the research process. So in addition to James and I sitting down having a conversation with Tanner, we also included a student who was also an SI leader. And so we poured over the data to try to figure out, you know, what was it that we wanted to do? Like one of the questions that we've heard in some of the, in between some of the presentations was that sometimes it can just be really challenging to get students to participate in SI sessions, and sometimes you see a dive in participation. And our data suggested that the more that students went to SI, specifically in the second half of the term, the more likely they were to get an A or a B in the course. And so consequently, as a team, it was a process, but we were able to come up with the idea that we wanted to share an infographic with students and faculty to help them to understand a little bit more about why we were encouraging participation. We found that students love data if we present it to them in a way that they appreciate. You want to tell them about the infographic?
Yes, so we published, this was last year, we published mid-quarter an infographic that we made available to faculty and to students, SI participants and non-SI participants alike, showing, and here you'll see, and there was actually more to the presentation of this. This is just the graphic. You'll see the third section, SI participants who attended SI sessions throughout the entire term, and there's an asterisk there. Throughout the entire term for us, and what we found and data informed was that students who attended or participated in SI sessions at least 4 in the first half of the term and at least 4 in the second half of the term, that there was a significant spike in correlation between their success in the course and also a reduction in DFWI across the board. So not only do students who participate at all, if you look at the middle column, average SI participant, this is data for any level of participation. So students who attended even once fall into this category. But students who, when we filter that out, students who attended at least 4 in the first and 4 in the second half, you can see the numbers there. It's a significant change. So that was helpful we were able to leverage this with students in encouraging students to continue their attendance in SI. And we did see a tremendous response to this in terms of the consistency throughout. So that dive that we saw in the term where we had collected this data, we didn't see. In fact, it was just the opposite when we ran the data around the term where this infographic was introduced. So this is one of the unique ways in which we were able, through that participatory action research, to design specific promotion using that data that would impact program attendance participation.
Mm-hmm. And so in the interest of time, we have one more slide, I think, or 2 more. So one of the other really cool things that we've been able to do with our Office of Institutional Research is to create a data dashboard, because, you know, with so much attention, or with SI in the spotlight, there are so many people who ask questions about, you know, is SI working, especially when we think about like the graduation initiative and, you know, thinking about DFWI rates. So we created a data dashboard together. I didn't put it up on I didn't put it up on the website, but we worked together. So we started by asking questions and talking about like what are the common questions that people are asking about the program. And then so what you see on the screen now does not look like what we started with at all, right? But once we had it up there, we received feedback from some of our department chairs and faculty members, and we made revisions. And then over time, the questions that we were receiving changed as well. So, you know, it was an iterative process with the IR team. We went back and forth a number of times over an extended period of time to continue to develop the dashboard. But it's available. If you have the link, you can just pull it up on the web and you can take a look and see how it's going. So when our faculty colleagues in the departments have questions or have to report on things, they're able to access the data themselves. And then we're able to speak to it in meetings. We can just pull it up and show it, and it really helps to inform our conversations and help people to understand a little bit more about what we do, at least the number side of it.
Absolutely. So just to review, the last slide is just a review of our process and the way that that kind of works for us as we look at that circle. We start with raw data, and for us, that's attendance data. And Brett, I think this is on the next slide. And that raw data, as we look at that and sit down and collect and figure out what it is that we should be collecting, we look carefully at the questions that we would like to find answers to. We look at those initial findings, and we let the initial findings in that dialogue with faculty or with students or in those different circles with stakeholders. Those initial findings kind of lead, and we are able to ask further questions. We refine that data. We move into a participatory action research modality so that we can put some feet to that, some legs to that in meaningful ways to present that data to stakeholders in various forms. And then that becomes our program response. After that, we measure the program response by collecting more data, and the process starts over again. So as Kiana mentioned, it doesn't work the same way on every campus. The mandate for institutional research may be very different, the functionality there and how that data is collected or refined. So whether this is at a department level or an institutional level, every campus is different, but that's the way that it's worked here for us at CSUSB. So I guess we have our question. What more can we tell you about interdependent or interdepartmental collaboration and data-driven programming? We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have either here, or we can answer offline too.
So I know we'll have some questions come in, but we have actually had a couple pop up while you all were presenting. And the first one is about the paper that you referenced, studying the matched comparison to gauge the effectiveness of supplemental instruction. Is that available on the San Bernardino website, or where could people access that?
The Did You Know infographic was published. I don't think that IR wrote a full paper about match sample comparison, but we do have the data. If someone is interested in trying to figure out, you know, like what the outputs look like and all of the analysis and stuff, we can share that information too. Great,
thank you. And the next question is about a quarter to semester conversion. Now I'm scared to even ask it. So how do you anticipate, or how do you think that it interacts with supplemental instruction when people are going through that conversion?
You want me to ask, or you want to answer? You want me to answer?
We're still, we have ongoing dialogue, and we are a part of that conversation at an undergraduate studies level, and then also in our peer-led support, because we work now together in a collaboration. This is relatively new for us, but a collaborative team around peer-led support that also involves our tutoring center and our student mentoring program. So we're in ongoing dialogue about what that partnership needs to look like moving forward, our services, how those are designed, how we sort of cross-pollinate in terms of making sure that we have robust services and a full suite of services as we make that transition. But we also are involved in some department meetings, meeting with faculty and with deans and various departments and colleges, looking at their plan. There is kind of a master plan here for that conversion, and so we're always trying to find our place in that. But SI, because of GI 2025, has also received a lot of spotlight, and it's been written into a lot of the strategic plans of our various academic departments as they move through that. So for us, that's all become one big thing. GI 2025, the executive orders affecting math, GE transformation, and conversion, because we're masochists, I guess. But we don't call that out specifically or separately because it's all one big thing for us in terms of that transition.
Got it. Got it. Okay, well, I know that we have more questions. Some folks might follow up with you offline, but I also want to be sensitive to time, and I know Brett has something that he wants to share here at the end. So I'm going to cut off our conversation a little bit earlier than I'd like and turn it over to Brett, just to keep everything on time.
Perfect. Thank you, Zach. Thank you so much, James and Kiana, again, for your ongoing work and your contributions to today's symposium. Another great presentation. Lots of great questions in the chat, and please do make those connections that you need to, or let us know how we can help you find resources and find answers. That's what we're here for. So I just have about another minute or so of a couple more things to share. So with our SI community, again, that's been going on since 2015 formally, and we meet monthly via Zoom, and we do a little bit of sort of updating from campuses, just to kind of hear what's going on, get a pulse at certain campuses, what's new, what's going on in your world, and then we tend to have a topic discussion each month, and we might usually we bring in a campus presenter on that topic to help lead the discussion. All the sessions are 1 hour, they're recorded. And then we have the slides archived as well. So you have the link there to the SI community website. We certainly invite you to participate. You can be there as many times as you want. You can show up only when you're really able to. Just feel free to make it useful for you as you can. And then we also asynchronously have the SI listserv, where we encourage folks to post questions. You don't want to wait till the April 19th session, but you want to try and get an answer maybe in the next few days. If you post that question to the SI listserv, you'll usually get a number of really good responses from all the, certainly experienced and qualified professionals across this group. So those are two ongoing venues that we have for you, and you can access those, and Zach will probably be putting those in the chat, probably has already. The listserv, you can click on the link there and easily join that. And we probably have an average of 1, maybe 2 emails per week, so don't be scared. I know how listservs can be. It's very low touch, but effective. And then we are working on, behind the scenes, developing a CSU SI resource repository, which would mean that we're going to develop a system where campuses can opt in to share their SI resources so that those can be shared across our campus programs, so that you won't have to develop everything from scratch. You won't have to reinvent the wheel, that you could look at different implementation resources, tracking resources, SI leader resources. Those will be tagged and searchable. It'll be an organized submission and search process, and they'll all be tagged as Creative Commons. So when that comes out, we'll have more to announce and more to share in developing that over summer. We hope to have that available by August. And then, as Julie mentioned at the beginning, we have the International Conference happening May 24th through 26th. When I checked a few weeks back, we had, I believe, 30 people from the CSU registered to attend. I'm going to check in with UMKC on May 1st to see what those numbers are, but I'm guessing we'll have about 40 people from our CSU SI community attending. So I know a lot of people are doing presentations. I know that that includes SI leaders attending and giving presentations. and I know we're going to have some awards, I'm sure, that'll be given to our campuses and recognizing their efforts. The deadline to save for Early Bird is April 20th, and if Zach could put the URL in the link, then you'll have access to that information. This is the only time I know of that it's happened on the West Coast, so this is a great opportunity. And again, thanks across the whole program here for the presenters today. These are the lead presenters and their contact information. And then the slides themselves, I'll break them up into respective slide sets and recordings. Those will be linked side by side at our Symposium website. You can see the tiny URL for that. Don't worry, automatically Zoom will be sending you a reminder announcement about that URL. And I'll be sending out a survey link in the next few days, and I'll give a couple weeks for people to be able to respond. And I promise you that that's going to be 5 minutes or less of your time, but we really value the feedback, and we continually strive to improve the program of support that we're offering for SI across the system. So with that, I will go ahead and end the formal part of the presentation, and we'll see if we have anything else in chat, but I know we're at the top of the hour. This has been perfect for timing. Thank you again, presenters, and thank you, Zach, for facilitating some of the Q&A, and thank you to all the participants for your attention and for your questions and contributions. Have a great rest of the day.